know all my homies subscribe to the Midwestern Marx Institute. Support my boys on Patreon, you feel me? Let's go!
Yo, it started in the heartland, 2020 flame lit. Eddie like a wrestling class war with a clenched fist. Olympic dreams, but the ring turned red. Now we slowing down knowledge, not just bodies instead. Carlos with the PhD, spitting dialectics. Philosophy so sharp, cutting through the skeptics. Built a think tank, big as the planes they stand on. Largest in the game, now the rest getting slept on. We Midwestern made Marxist land in this grade. From the farms to the factories, we never been afraid. From theory to practice, we breaking the chains. It's the people, it's the power, it's the world we reclaim. The carpenter grinded, building a movement, brick by brick, realignment, not just hammers and nails. He drops tools of the mind, class structure architect, history refined. 2023, Kyle Pettis in the frame. Team stir pride, bringing heat to the flame. Labor on the rise, organizers in the zone. With the workers in the streets, never fighting alone. We Midwestern made Marxist land in this grade. From the farms to the factories, we never been afraid. From theory to practice, we breaking the chains. It's the people, it's the power, it's the world we reclaim. With infrared, now it's on site. And from Midwest way, bringing fire to the fight. 2024, built the party of the land. American commies with the future in our hands. No NGO sellouts, no liberal disguise. Just Cardi, just truth and proletarian ties. We're reading Lenin in the morning, Mao by night. Dialectical moves and we ready to strike. We Midwestern made, ain't we here to stay. Red flags in the sky, blowing westward today. It's a class war symphony, we lead in the sound. From the Rust Belt roots to the battlegrounds. We Midwestern made, no fear, no shame. For the working class cause, we set in the flame. It's the vanguard rise from the soil to the page. It's Midwestern Marx and we bring in the rage.
Yo, yo. You know all my homies.
Keyboard warrior, mansion fortress. Talking big game, but the truth's distortion. Preaching revolution, but your hands stay clean. While the workers in the trenches, you collect that green. Socialist drip, gold chains, and a Tesla. Streaming wealth, capitalist fiesta. Flexing on the gram while the people bleed. Say you for the cause, but it's clout you feed. Red flags on the stream, but they ain't for the people. Big talk on the mic, but your actions deceitful. Preaching all that theory while your wallet's obese. Grifting off the struggle, you a wolf with no fleece. Twitch chat's lit, but the movement dim. Profits roll in while the cause grows slim. Screens full of rage, but your bank got calm. Critique organizers, yet you drop no bombs. Workers on the front lines, you just post memes. Turning revolution into digital schemes. Charity streams don't erase your gains. You selling the fight while you dodge the pains. Real ones in the dirt while you count stacks. Spitting rhetoric, but your morals lack. Fame over fight, streams over strikes. You has in a Bobby, but the truth ain't likes.
Yeah, revolution in the air, you ain't breathing the fumes. Penthouse views while the workers consume. Keyboard warrior tweaks in the bubble. Sipping on wealth while the world's in rubble. Call yourself a comrade, but your practice weak. Marks in your mouth, Gucci on your feet. Critique real struggle, you stay in your chair. Cloud chasing streams while the people despair. Marxist mansion blues, ain't walking the talk. Preaching class war from a millionaire's loft. Critics in the streets, you throwing your shots, but revolution ain't bought. Nah, it ain't bought. Real ones in the trenches, you stay in the crib. Posting hot takes, sipping Perrier sips. Lennon said it clear, no room for the rich. At your lifestyle screaming, I'm part of the glitz. Revolutionary jail, you laugh on cam. Banking off struggle, man, what's the plan? Socialist swag, don't feed the oppressed. Stream donations up, but the fight suppressed. Talk big game, but where's the dues? Caviar dreams got you confused. Real work's dirty, hands in the grind, but you streaming clean, dies in the grind. See y'all, ain't it? See y'all.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Eddie Liger Power Hour. Just finished up a long 2-hour stream with the Revolutionary Blackout Network. Go check that out. But I'm powering through and giving you guys yet another stream today. Wednesday's the normal day that we do the Eddie Liger Power Hour. So I didn't want to miss it just because I was a little bit tired after the RBN stream. So we're going to get after it tonight. I'm going to get tough, and we're going to have a really good show. The RBN stream kind of inspired me to try and do a breakdown and a deconstruction of the role that Hasan Piker plays within the American left. Just an introduction to that. Well, actually, let me save my introduction for after the real introduction, the intro video. Once this plays, we'll get right into the meat of today's episode.
High Sheriff Hazard is a hard man to be. High Sheriff is his only plan. He digs through pockets, takes what he can, for he's High Sheriff Hazard. He caught me one evening, and here's what he said: "You look like a Russian, you look like a red, and if you're fond of your skin and your head, beware the High Sheriff of Hazard."
Alrighty, folks. Before we jump into the Hasan Piker stuff, actually, sorry, not to blue ball anybody. Hasan has principles beyond vibes. Yeah, we will address that. He has the principle of always protecting the Democratic Party. That's for sure. Always attacking anybody who tries to work outside the Democratic Party, but we'll save that for a little later. I just want to touch on this. This will be a real quick segment here. Whoops, forgot to share my screen. Let me do that real quick. So a lot of you know that Venezuela has been a major issue for me forever. I wrote my undergraduate thesis on Venezuela and why the U.S. wants regime change there. It's mainly because of Venezuela's oil, and recently the U.S. actually loosened some of their sanctions on Venezuela because they were so desperate for oil. due to the sanctions on Russia, cutting off a lot of European countries from Russian energy. But now the U.S. is in a more desperate position than ever, trying to overthrow the Maduro government. And, rather than having to go to Maduro on their knees and begging for some of his oil, they're just trying to overthrow his government and seize all of the oil for themselves. So the U.S. deployed warships, and now Venezuela, in response, has deployed their own warships and a bunch of drones to the coast to meet these U.S. naval squadrons. So things are heating up. A lot of military buildup here. Obviously, Venezuela wouldn't be able to win a direct conventional war against the U.S., but what they might be able to win, or would be able to win if they fought it well, is a guerrilla war, right? Which is something that Chavistas and hardcore revolutionaries and hardcore Marxists and grassroots organizers in Venezuela have been preparing for years. It was a big thing after the attempted coup of Hugo Chavez in 2002 for the Venezuelans to arm themselves and create these people's militias that could defend against the arms of imperialism. So not only has Venezuela deployed warships and drones in response, but this is what they were recently chanting. In response to the U.S. Military buildup on their border. If you don't speak Spanish, they're chanting, Yankee, we will be your Latin Vietnam. We will be your Latin Vietnam, basically meaning if you attack us, you will be stuck fighting a disastrous guerrilla warfare or guerrilla war on our territory, where we understand the geography and we understand the situation better than you. And we will fight you in the trenches. We will fight you by any means necessary if you try to overthrow our country and make us a colony once again, which is exactly what the U.S. wants to do. So the Venezuelan people have a very elevated social consciousness, especially, like I said, the Chavistas and the hardcore organizers and many members of the military. The way that Hugo Chavez set up their military to work is you get promoted based on how much you do for the people, how much you serve the people. They launched all these social programs like road building programs, school building programs, things like that, led by the Venezuelan military. And you get promoted based on your ability to serve the people, which is how it should work in any kind of socialist system. And, obviously they have people who can fight too, but their military does a lot more than just sitting around the barracks sweeping all day like a lot of American troops do when they're not deployed. So the Venezuelans are ready. The people are ready. I hope the government is ready. But what I know for sure is that the hardcore organizers on the ground are ready. And the war drums are beating right now. The war drums and the U.S. corporate media war machine is in full effect. Look what The Hill published today. Just straight up an article titled, "The U.S. Should Overthrow Maduro in Venezuela." And a few years ago, an outlet called fair.org did a study to look at the number of elite commentators in Western media who oppose regime change in Venezuela. And there are 0 of them. Every single elite commentator wants to overthrow the Venezuelan government. And what's funny is that one of the main propaganda talking points against Venezuela is that they have no freedom of the press, right? The press is all controlled. It's all propaganda. We need to overthrow them. Meanwhile, our press is far, far, far more muzzled than theirs ever has been, at least since the revolution in 1998. So this is from some guy, Arturo McFields, who was connected to Harvard and Washington, D.C., and the Organization of American States his entire life. One of these guys who's been around the government and the U.S. empire his entire life, who's then given a job in media, a nice cushy job in media after his work is done with the government, to promote endless regime change war. And this is what we call the revolving door. These politicians serve the empire as politicians working in these different government apparatuses like the OAS, which Hugo Chavez called and Fidel called the Ministry of American Colonies in Latin America. They work for organizations like that, and then they get cushy jobs in the media. And that's how there's a revolving door is created between the public and private sector where they all think the same bullshit. So this argues that Maduro is isolated just like Gaddafi was in Libya. So now's the time to take him out, or Noriega in Panama. And if you know anything about Libya, you know that the overthrow of Gaddafi was a disaster. It threw their country into a horrific civil war. It allowed open air slave markets to be created. And this is the Libya that under Gaddafi was one of the most prosperous, if not the most prosperous countries in all of Africa. A country with a socialist system that took care of its people and gave its farmers free tools and gave its people free education and healthcare. It went from that to a country where they're still in a state of civil war with a bunch of warlords fighting each other in the power vacuum that the U.S. created. And the media, despite all of that, despite lying us into the war in Libya that turned out disastrously and is now considered the biggest mistake of Obama's presidency, they're still out here saying that we need to do the same thing to Venezuela. Venezuela's in the same state as Libya. We need to overthrow them. That should be an argument against going into Venezuela. You guys destroyed Libya. You wrecked Libya. What the hell are you talking about? We need to invade Venezuela now so it can be like Libya. It's just pure insanity, but this is how the corporate media works. And what's important is that you stand against the warmongering when it's ongoing. When the media is beating the war drums, you have to stand against it. You can't wait till 20 years later after the war has already been launched and after Libya has already been destroyed to come out and condemn it, which a lot of leftists did. They cheered on the war in Libya, and then after they realized what a fucking disaster it was, they came out and like, oh, isn't this terrible, and pretended like they were against it from the beginning. So stand against the war in Venezuela. Stand with the people of Venezuela and the Bolivarian Revolution. I have Gaddafi in my heart. Me too, don't we all? Author belongs in the gulag. You're damn right he does. All right. Who is this Karen? I'm going to end up putting you on a timeout probably in the chat. But all right, let's get into Hasan Piker. Okay, for many years, I have held back on Hasan Piker because I didn't want to do left-wing infighting. And to be honest, and maybe this is a little bit opportunistic on my part, but there has legitimately been a Hasan Piker to Midwestern Marx pipeline for a long time. There's a channel called North Star Radio that says, you know, Hasan got him into socialism, and then Midwestern Marx helped him get into communism and understand theory and understand geopolitics, understand imperialism, not just American domestic politics. So that pipeline has existed for a long time. I won't act like, you know, there are no Midwestern Marx members who didn't begin as Hasan Piker members, and that's fine. You know, that's the one positive role that he does play, but it's not like Hasan Piker told his audience to go listen to Midwestern Marx. Like, oh, these guys are teaching about theory and imperialism. You should go listen to them after you listen to me. No, absolutely not. It's people that we plucked out of that pipeline, people who were looking for a deeper understanding of politics and of Marxist theory than Hasan, who were able to find their way to us eventually, which is fine. It's fine as long as you eventually leave the Hasanabi community, right? And the older I've gotten and the more that things have progressed on the American left and the more that things have developed, thank you, Timothy Jackson, for the super sticker. Appreciate you, brother. The more that things have developed, the more clearly I've been able to see Hasan Piker's role on the American left, right? And his role is not to pipeline people into Midwestern Marx, to pipeline people into Marxism-Leninism. His role is to pipeline people into the Democratic Party. It's actually less of a pipeline. Noah said this today on the RBN stream. It's less of a pipeline, and it's more of a net. It's a net for people who want to get outside of the two-party system, who want to get outside of the two-party duopoly and start supporting some kind of revolutionary politics that doesn't involve voting harder to fight fascism. Hasan acts as a net, and at the last second, he takes people who are interested in revolutionary politics and steers them back towards the Democratic Party. And he does this by always supporting the Democrats, by always supporting the AOCs and Bernies of the world, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And he does it by attacking anybody who's trying to actually organize outside of the Democratic Party. He's attacked us, he's attacked RBN, and it was never with substantive critiques, right? There was never any comradely criticism going on. It's all based on fucking vibes. He literally just says, these guys are so weird. These guys are so weird and unchill and uncool. And in my audience, the Democrats are so chill and cool. These guys are literally fascists. They're literally giving off fascist vibes. My audience that supports the fascist Democrats funding a genocide in Israel, we're cool and hip and chill. And he'll laugh like this. Like he's a high schooler who just smoked weed for the first time. That's how he attacks actual revolutionaries. He'll never offer any kind of substantive criticism. It is all based on vibes. And he's called my party, the American Communist Party, nationalist and fascist, never providing any evidence. Never. But then he's sitting down and doing cushy interviews with Matt Duss, this guy who's a hardcore Ukraine proxy war supporter and a liberal Zionist. And it's like, you're the one who's courting fascism, buddy. You're the one who's courting these people who are sending weapons to Israel. Motherfucker, we've always been against Israel. Since day one. I've been doing videos against Israel for the last 6 years. Non-stop. And I always called out the Democrats on their hypocrisy surrounding Israel. But I'm the fascist because I won't work within the Democratic Party that's funding genocide? I mean, that's how upside down this guy's worldview is. And he gives rhetoric that makes him sound like a socialist, but that's why he's so dangerous. Because he says, yeah, come with me. We're socialists. We're radical. We're challenging the establishment. All right, go vote for Bernie and AOC. Go register as a Democrat and vote for the people who are funding genocide. Because they're slightly more critical of Israel than the Republicans. So now the mainstream media has been propping this guy up like crazy lately. Hasan Piker, a himbo gateway for progressives. Like, I just hate the corporate media so much. A himbo gateway. Shut up. Shut up. And here's CNN. Can this Twitch superstar be the left's Joe Rogan? Can Hasan be the left's Joe Rogan? They're so desperate. This is one of their main talking points right now. The Democrats need a Joe Rogan. They need their own Joe. And in many ways, Hasan is fulfilling that role as the Democrats' Joe Rogan. He pretends to be anti-establishment. He pretends to be pro-worker. He pretends to question the system. But his solution for solving it is to vote Democrat. Just like Joe Rogan's solution is to vote Trump. And guess what happens? Both of their audiences stay trapped within this illusion of democracy. This thing called the two-party system between two super corrupt parties who will never, ever, ever change or change anything about our country other than very minor technocratic superficial stuff. They filter you back into these two parties so you can't organize anything outside of them. That is the role that Hasan plays on the left and that Joe Rogan has played in recent years on the right. So the media is propping him up as the new Joe Rogan, and it is very accurate. And, you know, maybe it's a concerted effort behind the scenes to get him to posture as this kind of figure, even though he himself said that he doesn't want to be Joe Rogan because he hates Joe Rogan because of the culture war. So this is a great example here of Hasanabi's content, right? The Dems are in trouble. And the assumption, the premise of all of these videos is that the Democratic Party could be better. If the Democratic Party would just change their messaging, and if they would change a few of their policies, they would be great. And they would win over all these Americans, and they would fight imperialism and fight for the working class. And it's never going to happen. Anybody who's tried to work through the Democratic Party knows it is so deeply corrupt. They would not allow a mild European-style social democrat in Bernie Sanders to win the Democratic primary. They pulled out all of the stops to rig the primary against him. And he wasn't even a radical. He wasn't even a revolutionary. And so what a lot of the Midwestern Marx audience learned from that is, okay, working through the Democratic Party is a dead end. They're just going to rig the election against anybody who cares about the working class even a little, which shows you where the party establishment is at and how controlled they are by money. But it's fucking 5 years since the last Bernie campaign, and Hasan is still out here trying to fix the Democrats. If we could just tweak the Democratic Party a little bit, it would be so much better. Like, no, brah. They're all taking money from AIPAC. They're all taking money from the military-industrial complex and the oil lobby and all the same fucking lobbies that the Republicans are. The two-party system is a joke. You can't work through it. And this is what Marxist theorists, if you would actually read them, while claiming to be a Marxist, this is what they've been saying for years, that no revolution can come through bourgeois democracy because it's not a real democracy. It's controlled by money. It's ultimately a dictatorship of the ruling economic class, which is the capitalist class. So this is a pretty interesting video here before I go into his interview with Matt Duss, which is extra disgusting. Matt Duss is a scumbag. Man, this is a video he did about some Democrat who is trying to appeal to the working class. Just like John Fetterman did. Whoops. Just like John Fetterman did before he became the biggest Zionist in America. Pretended to be working class, put on a Carhartt sweater, and spoke to the working people of Pennsylvania and then sent all their money to Israel. Like, how many times are these people going to fall for it? The Democrats put out some messaging that's aimed at working class people and that isn't super woke. And all these people are like, wow, they're really trying to serve the working class now. No, they're not. It's a trick. It's a ploy. Rubbing some grease on your face and wearing a Carhartt sweater doesn't make you pro-working class if you're taking money from AIPAC and shit. See, they don't care if the Democrats actually serve the working class. They just want the Democrats to change their messaging so that they can get working class people into the party, which is a corrupt, warmongering Zionist political party, and it always has been. That's a theme you'll notice with Hasan. He criticizes the Democrats' messaging much more than he criticizes what they actually do. He basically just wants the Democrats and liberals to steal Marxist, socialist, communist messaging. He wants the liberals to steal working class messaging so that they can continue to filter people into the Democrats. So you kind of get the idea here. This guy's like not woke. He's like appealing to the working class. He's one of these tough guy Democrats who's not like the other Democrats. You get the idea. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to right here. Compare him to what you see to the rest of the Democratic Party. So that's his standard. As long as you're not as shitty as the genocide funding Democrats, as long as you're not as corrupt and openly corrupt as Nancy Pelosi, who's trading on Wall Street every day, as long as you're not as bad as them, you get my support. You get my full support. Well, guess what the progressive wing of the Democratic Party does, Hasan? They trick people into thinking that change will come from the Democrats, when in reality, the party is run by the Pelosi's and the Schumers of the world and the Fettermans of the world, and mainly their corporate donors. That's who actually runs the Democratic Party. What your best friends, AOC and Bernie, do is trick young would-be radicals into thinking that they should put their organizing efforts behind the Democrats. That is the role that the left wing of the Democratic Party plays. And that's the role that you play. You tell people who are desperate for change, who are ready to fight for change, who are ready to go out in the streets and organize for change, that change will come through better Democrats, that change will come through going to the ballot box and voting for more AOCs even though she voted against a bill to defund Israel and voted for Iron Dome funding. And on all the major issues, it stands up for the proxy war in Ukraine. On all the major issues, she's the same as the damn Republicans pretty much. And her party is the exact same as the Republicans. And you're telling us that change will come through voting for her, even after we've watched the last however many years of failure. And I was someone who donated to AOC's campaign. I was pro AOC. She let me down, though. And I realized that this strategy that people like you and Kyle Kulinski have been selling the American people doesn't work. If you actually want change in your community, in your workplace, in your country, voting for progressive sounding Democrats is not going to cut it. You have to work outside the two-party system. So it's almost more disturbing than like a Republican who just tells you that they're anti-communist or they're anti-revolutionary, because he tells you that he is revolutionary. He is a communist. He is fighting the system. You just got to come with me and join the two-party system and vote for it. It's not how it works. Every Marxist theorist in history has explained that this is not how it works. You have to work outside of that system. You have to form a sovereign party that's free from the two-party duopoly. But anytime somebody does that, Hasan has more vitriol for them than he's ever had for AOC and Bernie. This guy has more vitriol for the Revolutionary Blackout Network and ACP than he has for any of these progressive Democrats as they vote to continue funding fucking fascist Israel and their genocide. And you want to know why? It's because of aesthetics. It's because of vibes. It's because they give these progressive vibes and fight the culture war, man. So he cares more about their culture war position and their left-wing aesthetic than he cares about the actual policies that they support and practice. There's no audio from the video? Oh, damn it. Sorry, I haven't been reading chat. Oh, that sucks. I spoofed. Sorry, I was on too much of a rant. Let me turn that on quick. Dang it. Maybe. Marxist technology moment. Wouldn't be a Midwestern Marx stream without technical difficulties. What up, Lane 2006? Thank you for letting me know that, brother. I appreciate you. All right, restarting. We'll just restart from here.
Who they can pay slave wages and abuse at will. I will support a path to citizenship and an end to the mass deportation machine. We need strong border security and a path to citizenship. We cannot do one without the other. I don't love we need a strong border security talk, but but again, match your expectations to what you see from the rest of the Democratic Party, and this guy stands out.
Match your expectations based on what you see from the rest of the Democratic Party. That's what he wants you to do. If somebody's better than the Democrats, he wants you to put your support behind them. That's all it takes for him to be more pro-worker than Nancy Pelosi, who's doing insider trading on Wall Street and raking in millions of dollars, not to mention the money that she gets funneled by AIPAC and the Israeli lobby. As long as they're better than her, they're a revolutionary, and we need to vote for them and do cushy interviews with them while calling the ACP and calling RBN a bunch of nationalists and right-wingers. You are supporting right-wing politics. You are supporting the party that supports fascist Israel.
It's good to be critical and make an assessment off of like everything that they're communicating, but ultimately he's an ACP member.
I love that. I love that. Look how he mocks the idea that this guy might be working outside of the two-party system. That's the idea that he laughs at. Not the idea that this guy is going to transform the Democratic Party into a party of workers when it's never been that, and it's so deeply, deeply corrupt. That's not a ridiculous idea to him. What's ridiculous is the ACP, because we're working outside of that two-party system. That is what is the most ridiculous to him. And does he make a critique of the ACP? No, it's all based on vibes. Again, haha, they're working outside the Democratic Party. Those idiots. Fail, epic fail. That's so uncool and so unchill. Only dyeing your hair pink and voting Democrat and painting your nails is chill and cool. We're the cool guys. Those revolutionaries who are organizing something outside the two-party system, bunch of losers. Where's the critique? There's no critique. You just said that this buff guy who's trying to appeal to workers is ACP. It's kind of a compliment, honestly.
Nah, it's funny. Yeah, he's a part of the American Communist Party. I don't think so. Where I stand.
I don't think so. I don't think so. He's not that crazy. He's not crazy that he would actually want a revolution and actually want to not vote Democrat as if it's going to fucking do anything. He's not that crazy. He's one of the cool, chill ones who votes for Israeli Iron Dome funding and votes against the bill to defund Israel and votes and pushes the Ukraine proxy war. He's one of the good ones who does that. Shut the fuck up. You are such a cuck to the two-party system, pretending like you're some radical.
Maine is becoming unaffordable for thousands of us. Why? Because we have a government by, of, and for billionaires who are building a billionaire economy that none of us can afford. I'm not just running against Susan Collins. I'm running against the billionaire class that owns her in all of Washington. Even if this is fake, okay? Even if this is like fake posturing, it's good that there is this kind of messaging coming out, okay? This is what every Democrat should be saying, including Pete Buttigieg. This should be the thing that Democrats are screaming from the mountaintops, okay? That is what they should be pushing all the time.
Look, all of his analysis is how the Democrats could be better. It's either how the Democrats could be better and how the Democrats could win more people over into their corrupt warmongering party. And he never tells them to stop being warmongers and stuff. He just criticizes their messaging for the most part. And then anytime somebody who works outside of that two-party system is brought up, he mocks them and pretends like they're crazy because they're not in his little political clique where they feel tied to these two corrupt, disgusting, warmongering, fascistic parties who occupy our country at the behest of Wall Street. That's what Hasan considers cool. If you fall under that umbrella of the two Wall Street and big bank-controlled parties, right, then you're a reasonable person who's worth engaging with. But the second you leave that two-party system, you're worthy of mockery. He's just going to laugh in your face and call you a nationalist with no explanation, as if he even fucking knows what that means. Bro spends 8 hours a day streaming while calling himself a Marxist. Most Marxists I know read books, okay? Most Marxists I know don't spend 8 hours a day on the computer growing their own wealth. They learn a little bit about the theory that they claim to champion.
We should not settle for politicians who speak in vague generalities about policy. Here's where I stand. Most importantly, I want to hear from you as this platform grows and develops. Overview. America's entered a new gilded age. We have a government of, by, and for billionaires. We have direct consequence of disastrous court decisions capped by Citizens United that have allowed billionaires to buy elect.
Yes, and we'll stop this by voting for Democrats. Where have we heard this before? Remember when AOC and Ilhan Omar and Bernie Sanders were going to take down the establishment and the billionaires? And then they turned around and begged us all to vote for Joe Biden? That's how this works. That's what Hasan and the progressive wing of the Democratic Party do. They tell you they're going to be different than the other Democrats. So then you go register as a Democrat and you vote for them. And then they lose and they say, well, now you have to vote for Joe Biden. Now you have to vote for the corporate Democrat. And that draws people in to the Democratic Party, which is never going to change, which is always going to be a corrupt imperialist party. It will never be a party of the workers. It's far too deeply corrupted by financial interests. But by promising people that they're going to be different than the other Democrats, they get people to register Democrat, and then they get people to vote for pieces of shit like Joe Biden. And all along, people could have been organizing something new. They could have been organizing something like the ACP that works outside of the two-party system, that isn't connected to Wall Street at all, that in fact directly opposes itself to Wall Street and says, fuck you, we don't want your money. We're taking you down. We're redistributing your wealth to the working class. We could have been organizing something like that for the last 5 years, but Hasan, Piker, AOC, and Bernie have been drawing people into the party of Nancy Pelosi. So it's a huge stopgap on the revolutionary organizing and the class struggle and the real class politics that we actually could be pushing for in America. So now this one is really bad. Really bad. Hasan got cooked by his own audience for this one. It's an interview with Bernie's warhawk, fake progressive, pseudo-progressive foreign policy advisor Matt Duss. This guy who says that Russia's tactics are far more brutal than Israel's. This guy who has been a Ukraine war hawk from the beginning and who is nothing but a liberal Zionist who gives some, mealy-mouthed critiques of Netanyahu to pretend like he's a progressive. Right? So guys like me who are communists working outside the two-party system, we're beyond the pale. Hasan will never have me on. He'll just laugh at our party and call us a bunch of nationalists. But this guy who's supporting ethno-nationalism in Ukraine and Israel actively in the real world, Hasan has no pushback for him. They just have a chummy conversation. It's so absurd. You're calling us nationalists with no evidence while you're sitting down with the guy who's pumping money and guns into ethno-nationalist groups and telling progressives and left-wingers that that's what they should support. You're the nationalist. If you would look at the substance instead of the fucking culture war for 2 seconds, you would realize you're supporting nationalism in practice. You're giving a platform to these people who are funneling guns to ethno-nationalists, while you accuse us of that for cleaning our communities and helping different workplaces in our areas form unions. It's so fucking insane. You're so performative. Yeah, I'm performative. That's why I go out in the streets and organize with the American Communist Party every single day, while Hasan's in his mansion, pretending like it's practice to interview Bernie and AOC. Yeah, I'm the performative one. You live in a upside down world created for you by fake progressives like Hasan. All right, this one is wild. This Matt Duss guy is a piece of shit. Where do we start here? 1718. I wasn't talking about Russia being an ethno-state, dumbass. I was talking about unless you were saying that to someone else. Sorry for calling you a dumbass if you were saying that to someone else. I was talking about the Azov Battalion and the ethno-nationalist groups that the U.S. has been propping up in Ukraine since the end of World War II. The ones who did the U.S.-backed coup in 2014, which Bernie supported wholeheartedly, probably because of this guy, Matt Duss, his foreign policy advisor. Those are the ethno-nationalists I'm talking about. Those and the Israeli ethno-nationalists. It's the same ideology that the U.S. propped up in Ukraine and these fake progressives propped up in Ukraine. It's the same ideology in a different form as the Israeli Zionist ideology. It's all ultra-nationalism, dehumanizing the other.
Have had issues with Israel in ways that we've never seen in American politics before. So when the overwhelming public sentiment is...
One sec. Let me slow this down for a second. It's a little fast.
I like to jokingly say Israel o'clock, and the Democrats are completely unable to ride that wave, even on a partisan, even with a cynical, cold, calculated partisan analysis. I fear that void will be taken over by grifters and maybe even anti-Semitic people. And the Democrats are actually dropping the ball both politically and also on the policy front on this issue once again. I think AOC should be the person that is pushing for amendments like that. Do you disagree?
I don't know if that amendment is the one to fight on. I think there are a lot of great things that she's pushed, and she will. We're moving into the NDAA, this big defense authorization bill.
Defunding Israel isn't the thing to fight on. That's not what progressives should run for. It's because he's a liberal Zionist. He supports Israel's right to defend itself and to exist. He supports the existence of an Israeli ethno-state. Hasan is buddies with a guy who supports an ethno-nationalist project in the modern day. And he wants to call me a nationalist. Me who's condemned Israel from the beginning. I think I started at the wrong point here. One sec. Here we go. That's right. Yeah.
Is being experienced in every facets of American politics. Like independents are overwhelmingly seeing Israel in a disfavorable way. Even Republicans by majority, regardless of their loyalty to Donald Trump, have had issues with Israel in ways that we've never seen in American politics before.
Would I accept an interview with Hasan if he was ever brave enough to invite you on his stream? Of course. I would love to. And that's the difference between me and him. He doesn't want to have me on because he knows I would call him out over his support for Democrats. And I would be able to make the argument that supporting Democrats isn't going to lead to any kind of real substantive or revolutionary change, because it never has. And it never will, because of the way that the Democratic Party operates. It wasn't made to be a socialist, communist, workers' party. It's a neoliberal party. I would be able to make that argument to him, so he would never have me on. He doesn't want to get called out. He doesn't want to get criticized. And that's the difference between me and him. I would love to hear his criticisms of me and the ACP, because he's never actually made any. He just mocks us and pretends like we don't exist, or pretends like we're a bunch of dumbasses. I would love to hear what his actual criticisms are, because he's never actually made one. And that's the difference between me and him. I don't have anything to hide. He is trying to hide any and all critiques because he knows deep down that he is a funnel to the Democratic Party. He knows the ACP's criticisms of him are correct.
So when the overwhelming public sentiment is
exactly, and his chat likes me too. Like I said, there's a huge Hasan Piker to Midwestern Marx pipeline. So I would have a very good chance of winning his chat over, and that's what he fears most. This guy is so cucked by his chat. Unless they're mad at him for talking to a neoliberal, then he's okay with it. Thank you, Sombra. $10 super sticker. Let's go. Appreciate you, brother.
Jokingly say Israel o'clock, and the Democrats are completely unable to ride that wave, even on a partisan, even with a cynical, cold, calculated partisan analysis. I fear that void will be taken over by grifters and maybe even anti-Semitic people. And the Democrats are actually dropping the ball, both politically and also on the policy front.
So do you get what he's saying here? He's terrified that the anti-Zionist movement that's growing in this country will not be led by the Democrats. That is his fear. That everyone in America is turning anti-Zionist and the Democrats aren't the ones leading it. And they don't think that voting Democrat is the solution to Zionism. Well, of course not, bud. They're all taking AIPAC money. Even AOC, the progressive savior who you claim is going to save the Democratic Party and lead it in the right direction, is voting for the Israeli Iron Dome. She voted against an amendment to defund Israel because it came from someone she didn't like, or because she's actually a Zionist deep down. A liberal Zionist. That's what her policies would. I mean, she is. She straight up says Israel has a right to defend themselves, which means Israel has a right to maintain an ethno-state, an ethno-supremacist fascist society on top of Arab land. That's what it means to say that Israel has a right to defend itself and a right to exist. Because if Israel wasn't an ethno-state, if they let Arabs live there and gave them equal rights, then Arabs would make up the majority of the population, and the country itself would be called Palestine. So Israel's right to exist is premised upon the complete dehumanization of the indigenous people there. And that's the progressive wing of the Democrats. So yes, they're a Zionist party. And yes, people who are becoming anti-Zionist are turning away from the Democratic Party. That is good. That is a good thing. That is not a bad thing. That means we can start organizing something else. That means we can actually start fighting the system outside of the rigged elections, the ballot box that is determined 93% of the time by the candidate who raises the most money from Wall Street. But he's scared of that. He's scared that people are turning away from the Democratic Party and realizing it's a puppet of AIPAC. He's scared that people are realizing the Democrats are a Zionist party through and through. Even the progressive wing of the Democrats are liberal Zionists, to the point where Marjorie Taylor fucking Greene is now the most anti-Zionist, most genuinely progressive person on this issue in all of Congress. He's terrified of people realizing what the Democrats actually are. He wants people to become anti-Zionist and go vote for Democrats harder. Why would I do that when they're all taking money from AIPAC? Why would I do that when the progressive Democrats who you promote and who you tell me are socialists are out here voting for Israel's Iron Dome and voting no to defunding them when they're fucking starving people on purpose, creating a manufactured famine? Like, hell yes, I'm turning my back on the Democratic Party. Everybody should. They're controlled by AIPAC just like the Republicans. But that's what he fears, right? For us, that's a good thing. For us, that's a good thing. Yes, now a party outside of the liberal political circus, this fake political system that they've set up for us in order to keep people voting for the same endless wars and the same Wall Street and big bank bailouts year after year. He wants people to stay trapped within that system. His greatest fear is that they leave and say, you know what, enough with the Democrats and the Republicans. They've both proven themselves to be corrupt time and time and time and time and time and time again, even the progressive wing. We're going to try something else. We're going to build something outside of that. That is his greatest fear. And that's why he mocks people like us who are organizing outside the party. And that's why he's saying right now that he's scared people are leaving the Democrats because they're becoming anti-Zionist. You should be happy about that.
This issue once again. I think AOC should be the person that is pushing for amendments like that. Do you disagree?
I don't know if that amendment is the one to fight on. I think there are a lot of great things that she's pushed, and she will. We're moving into the NDAA, this big defense authorization bill. I'm really interested to see what she's going to be offering there. I don't know if that one bill that Marjorie Taylor Greene offered was really the kind of hill to fight on. I understand what people have concerned about it. I think there are smarter places to fight. But I would also say, people should understand, and I think most people do, that she's been one of the great champs on this. And I think it's fair to have disagreements and to question some of the choices she makes. But I also think it's important to keep
nods his head. One of the great champs on this. One of the great champs who can't vote against giving Israel weapons when they're starving children to death on purpose and bombing hospitals. She voted no to defunding that country, and she's our great champion. And make no mistake about it, when Hasan says he's afraid about people going towards grifters, instead of the Democrats, he's not just talking about like Dan Bilzerian and these right-wingers, right? He's not worried that, or just worried that anti-Zionism will take people to more conservative parties, as this person says. Because he's badmouthed our party, which is a communist party, an explicitly pro-worker party, an explicitly anti-imperialist party that tries to work outside of the Democratic Party. He's badmouthed us time and time again while supporting DSA, which again is running Democratic candidates like Zoran. It's still attached to the Democratic Party. You can be a DSA member and still run as a Democrat, and those are the ones who have actually won, the ones who have done that. So he's not just scared that people are going to start listening to Dan Bilzerian or Jake Shields. He's scared that people will leave the Democrats for a real revolutionary party outside of the two-party system like the American Communist Party. He's worried that people, and he's admitted that our party is to the left of him, and yet he calls us grifters and calls us nationalists and all this bullshit. So when he says grifters there, make no mistake about it, he's talking about us too. He's talking about people who are to the left of him, not just people who are to the right of him.
That in mind. I mean, she has done enormous work.
She called it a genocide way before many people did.
Right.
Oh, she called it a genocide. Is that the fucking bar? Again, it's this, compare her to the other Democrats. How about no? How about compare her to where the working class is at? The working class is anti-Zionist, and the best she can give is, well, Israel is doing a genocide, but we should still send them money and guns so they can defend themselves. That's not a revolutionary position. That's not a socialist or Marxist position. It never has been. That is a liberal Zionist position. And yet she's the great champion who we all need to rally behind? Fuck off. I'll rally behind Ghassan Kanafani, the famous Palestinian Marxist-Leninist who was in the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, a communist party with no ties to the Democratic Party or anything like it. Well, maybe the PLO towards the end, but
and that should be right.
So I think that's all I had on that. Now listen to this freaking bitch Matt Duss here. This one is really crazy, you guys. And the lack of pushback from Hasan on this one is insane.
On that front, I guess because I wanted to see like you're a foreign policy guy. This is what you do. I wanted to see like what are some of the disagreements that we might have. And one I think is on the issue of Zionism in general, because as I said, I see Zionism as
this is true, Justin Watson. If he would just read the German ideology, if he would read an ounce of theory, he would realize that the American Communist Party has a very basic Marxist-Leninist line applied to American conditions. he would realize that all of our positions today are informed by the greatest and most successful Marxists and Marxist-Leninists of the past. But he doesn't do that. He streams for 8 hours a day. He could easily take a 2-hour break from streaming every day and read a book, right? Or not even that. Take 20 minutes off of streaming every day and read some Lenin pamphlets. And all this confusion would be cleared up, but he doesn't want to do that because his grift is to be the progressive wing of the Democrats, right? That's what his audience is now, and he's captured by his audience.
No supremacist ideology that is built around the extermination of the indigenous population.
Aren't we anti-trans and anti-immigrant? No, is that something Hasan told you? It probably is. No, we have transgender individuals in our party. And our program wants to bring an end to modern slavery and the systems of imperialism that are forcing people to flee countries like Syria and Venezuela en masse. In that way, we're not against immigrants, and our chairman, Haas, has railed against immigrant fear-mongering many times, as have I and all the other members, right? We're not against individual immigrants, of course. All the fear-mongering against them is just nonsense. But we are against imperialism forcing people to flee their countries for the U.S. But yeah, I'm sure Hasan told you that we're just these transphobe, anti-immigrant nationalists, because he just makes shit up. He just makes shit up about anybody who's working outside of the Democrats. And it's all based on vibes. Because I work out and I look like a Trump supporter, he doesn't believe I can be a real communist. And he tells everyone I'm a crypto scammer and a nationalist.
That happens to be non-Jewish.
Because I actually uphold the principles of Marxism, which is the ideology that he claims to have.
In-group, out-group dynamic. And so therefore I see it as inherently fascist. And I feel like this is something that a lot of people refuse to reckon with. And I wonder.
He's correct on this. He's correct on this. Zionism, and this is him attempting to really challenge Matt Duss, which is funny. If you want to see a politician actually get challenged by a real revolutionary, watch the Revolutionary Blackout Network's interview with Ro Khanna. If you want to see a comparison to Hasan's interview here, and if you want to compare how soft Hasan is being on Matt Duss to something else, watch the Revolutionary Blackout Network, who does not support the Democrats, interview Ro Khanna. They absolutely steamrolled him. It wasn't these chummy discussions with warmongers.
If you have disagreements with this.
I mean, I would disagree with defining all of Zionism that way. I think the actual material reality, like Zionism as it exists in the world, unfortunately, I think reflects that. And people who are Zionists, I think, need to contend with that. But I think there are other forms of Zionism. I mean, there was a pretty serious debate going in the late 1800s into the early part of the 20th century. People who classified themselves as identified as Zionists, but there were questions over: do we need our own state? Can we form a community within an existing state? There were all kinds of questions about, okay, how do we relate to the indigenous population? Is it a Jewish ethno state? What does self-determination for Jews really require?
There's no question. There's no question within Zionism about should they be a Jewish ethno state. Even the labor Zionists believe that. It was the labor Zionists, the more progressive Zionists, who led the Nakba, the original expulsion of over 70% of Palestinians from their homes. So this debate, this abstract theoretical debate within Zionism that he's talking about, is a bunch of bullshit. The labor Zionists pretended to be more progressive and pretended to be more left-wing, much like Hasan and AOC do for the Democrats, while massacring Palestinians and creating the basis, the material basis for an ethno state, a fascist ethno state in practice. So what's he talking about with this debate about Israel and where their homeland should be, and there's more progressive Zionists? Yeah, the progressive Zionists were the ones who committed the Nakba. They're the ones who started the genocide. So I don't give a shit about their more progressive rhetoric about indigenous people or whatever. They're murderers and Nazis pretending to be progressives. That is labor Zionism, and it always has been.
So that's how I would tend to define Zionism broadly. It's just the belief that the Jews are a people, and as a people have a right to self-determination. Now others define, a right to self-determination in their historic homeland of Israel in the Middle East, a right to a Jewish ethno state.
Self-determination doesn't mean you get an ethno state. It does not mean that you get to expel the existing population from their homes. And he's saying, well, certain aspects of Zionism or certain elements of Zionism don't support the ethno state. They want to live in harmony with Palestinians. Yeah, that's what they said. That's what the labor Zionists were saying. in the 40s and 50s while they were the ones leading the mass expulsions. We know this. We know that Zionism at every level is an ethno-supremacist, ethno-nationalist, fascist ideology, no matter what you dress it up in, no matter how much progressive language you dress it up in. And this guy's pretending like there are different kinds of Zionism that are more humane. Get the hell out of here. Israel's been around for 70 plus years now. We know what they do. We know what these progressive Zionists are all about. Just look at history.
You know, people add all kinds of different details on that. But in understanding it in its broadest terms, I understand it as I said. I mean, I know I've really close friends who identify themselves as progressive Zionists, who would share a lot of our criticisms, and who live there and do this work under
At
considerable
least Hasan laughed at him when he said progressive Zionists.
pressure and trying to create a society that is equal, in which Jews and Palestinians are equal under the law. Some of them support two states, some of them support one state, some of them support one kind of confederal arrangement. But I do think there are people who identify strongly as Zionists, to whom your description of kind of a violent ethno-eliminationist chauvinism doesn't really apply.
Yeah, I think at the end of the
there are people who identify as Zionists who aren't chauvinists, who aren't ethno-nationalists. They just support and live in an ethno-nationalist fascist state in practice. But because they pretend to be more progressive, because they give more language criticizing Israel, we're going to give them a pass and say that they're not ethno-nationalists, even though they support the real-life existence of an ethno-nationalist project. I mean, that was just shameful. I would steamroll Matt Duss if I was sitting down with him right now. I would absolutely steamroll him on the history of labor Zionism and so-called progressive Zionism and tell him how it was the labor Zionists who were in power when the Nakba was being committed. It was the labor Zionists who were joining these gangs like the Irgun and the Lehi, who were expelling Palestinians from their homes and mass murdering them. Let's see what Hasan does.
Day, if the impact and the ultimate reality that is unfolding is genocide in Gaza and pogroms in the West Bank with a deliberate attempt to inevitably implement the greater Israeli state project, which Benjamin Netanyahu has even pontificated on as recently as this past week, then the way I see it.
So he's saying in practice, even these progressive Zionists are basically acting as fascist ethno-nationalists, which is fine. That's a fine response from Hasan, I guess. But what he should have done is gone into the history of labor Zionism and explained how these progressive Zionists have always been on the front lines of the mass expulsions and the extermination of the indigenous Arab population.
This is just like the old understanding of Zionism. And I always go back to Albert Einstein on this, which, he was, I guess, such a Zionist initially that he was slated to be the president of Israel, the first president of Israel. And his attitude on this was that the brigades, the initial, the early Zionist brigades that turned into the Israeli Defense Force after the development of the nation state, when he saw the atrocities that were unfolding, when he caught wind of this, he wrote letters.
Okay, he did it. Good job, Hasan. Credit where credit is due. I would have been a lot more vitriolic in my response towards this guy, but he did bring up the progressive Zionist gang, so we give him a pass on that one. He did all right with that, but that shows how disgusting this Matt Duss character is, talking about progressive Zionism when he's an actual foreign policy advisor for Democratic politicians. And that shows you where Bernie Sanders is at with this issue. And who does Hasan Piker ultimately tell you to vote for? Bernie Sanders. So he understands this, right? He clearly does. He clearly knows that there is no progressive Zionism. There is no labor Zionism historically. Yet he's perfectly willing to tell you to vote for politicians that do believe in labor Zionism, that do want to dress up Zionism and give it a more humane face so it can go on exterminating Palestinians in the background. So again, in practice, he falls on the side of the Democrats and even on the side of liberal Zionism, even though he can explain with his mouth, his words, why liberal Zionism is a joke and why it's bad, or, labor Zionism, progressive Zionism, whatever. But at the end of the day, who does he tell his audience to vote for? AOC and Bernie, who are liberal Zionists, who support the existence of an ethno-state. And this is the guy informing Bernie's foreign policy, this guy running cover for Zionism right now. And his positions on Ukraine, Israel are even worse. He doesn't even try to give a real analysis of U.S. involvement in Ukraine. And let's go to that now.
And I don't know if irony is the right word, but no country has done more to help really diminish and strangle the Israeli peace movement and the possibility of the emergence of a more pluralistic and equal vision of the Zionist state of Israel than the.
How is Hasan not telling people to vote for Zionists? How is it absurd? How is that absurd? He sat down and did an interview with Bernie and AOC. He's constantly championing Bernie and AOC. He absolutely tells people to vote for Bernie and AOC. And this guy right here, who's promoting Zionism and trying to give Zionism a more progressive face, is literally Bernie's foreign policy advisor. This is the guy who informs Bernie's policy on Zionism. So even though Hasan can explain to his audience why he's wrong about Zionism, at the end of the day, he's still supporting the candidates who support what this guy does. And that's what matters more than anything. It's not about what you say on your stream so much as what you actually do in practice. And in practice, Hasan is telling you to vote for liberal Zionists like this guy and the politicians he advises. And he's mocking the Revolutionary Blackout Network and Midwestern Marx and the ACP and Infrared, any group that wants people to organize outside the two-party system. That's what he supports in practice. He mocks these people who have been, strongly anti-Zionist from the beginning. And these are also new positions for Hasan. Right? He's newly come to realize the true face of Zionism. And he's come to understand these things and be able to explain them. Right? But 4 or 5 years ago, he wasn't. He was a liberal Zionist openly, just like this Mad Dust guy. We were never that way. We were always against this ethno-nationalist project. And yet, when he talks about us, he calls us the ethno-nationalists. The people who have been standing up against Israeli fascism for 5 years, when he just recently hopped on the bandwagon of being, vehemently anti-Zionist, including liberal progressive Zionism, so-called progressive Zionism. So yes, in practice, he is telling you to vote for Zionists, which is even more nefarious because he's pretending to be an anti-Zionist. He's explaining to people why all forms of Zionism are bad and all forms of Zionism are ethno-nationalism and fascism. But then he turns around at the very last second and says, vote for people who are Zionists, and mocks people who are working outside the Democrats. And that is his function, to take people who consider themselves revolutionaries, who are anti-Zionists, who do want real change from the left, and always at the last second filter them right back into the Democrats, mainly through the progressive wing of the Democratic Party.
United States by shielding it from those consequences. And people like Joe Biden, who says there should be no daylight between the U.S. and Israel. That kind of approach has been wind at the back of this of the extremists who are now perpetrating this genocide.
Yeah. Okay. Let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about Ukraine. And by the way, at any point, if you have you need to pull out, because I've already taken up a lot of your time today, you're a busy guy, you can let me know and we can end it. But what's up?
Let's talk Ukraine.
Okay. So Ukraine. Some people like Tim Pool have called it the enemy of the United States. I do not have this mindset, of course. I feel like it's been a litany of policy, a string of policy failures overall. And I do think that there were exit ramps, but I fear that it's an unsalvageable situation that the Trump administration is making even worse than the Biden administration. What do you think is going to happen at these summits by your estimation?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't really know, because this summit is, let's just say Donald Trump is not a traditional foreign policy leader, to put it lightly. A summit of this kind, you would have seen at least some real work being done at the lower level by kind of lower level diplomats from both sides to kind of hammer out an agenda and a set of kind of key, discussion points and a general expectation of what you're going to try to get out of it. Whereas Trump is just kind of charging in and saying, I want to end the war, I want to get a ceasefire, and if Putin doesn't agree to it, then basically something bad will happen. I'll also say, I don't necessarily see that as a criticism. I think there's sometimes good reason to do non-traditional foreign policy. When Trump, Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, back in I think it was 2018, a lot of people criticized.
I love it.
Just for context, because what he's saying now isn't too substantive. It's kind of boring policy technocrat stuff. But this guy has been a Ukraine proxy war hawk from the beginning. Right? He's been like a Slava Ukraini guy. He said that Russia's methods of war were far more brutal than Israel's. Seriously, he said that. So that's where he's coming from here. They haven't even pretended to question the war in Ukraine at all. They have been gung-ho, this progressive wing of the Democrats, in favor of the NATO proxy war in Ukraine.
Bernie was one of the people who didn't.
Yeah.
It was like, we should be talking. We should be talking to our adversaries. Diplomacy is good. The question is what you get out of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the question to have here. What is Trump hoping to get out of it? Clearly, he came into office saying, "Oh, it'll be easy to get peace in Ukraine. This will take me 24 hours. I'll go in. I'll kind of push the Ukrainians to make an agreement. I have a good relationship with Putin." He found out it's a bit more complicated than that. Even though I really didn't enjoy watching the kind of brutal treatment of Zelensky in the Oval Office, the kind of upshot of Trump really strong arming the Ukrainians into agreeing to ceasefire talks is that he's revealed once again that Zelensky isn't the problem. Putin is the problem.
Yeah.
It's Putin's choices.
Yeah, says Hasan. Yeah. Putin, who offered a peace agreement that Ukraine wanted to accept in 2022. Putin, who offered a peace agreement 3 years ago. But the U.S. and NATO told Ukraine not to sign it. Not Putin, not Russia. They wanted peace. It was Ukraine. It was the UK, the US, France, and the Western countries who pressured Zelensky into not signing the peace agreement. People's Dispatch had some good articles on this. They're an independent news outlet. It was NATO who continued the war and who have always pushed Zelensky to continue the war. Putin has offered multiple peace agreements. Putin said, as long as you stop trying to add Ukraine to NATO before the war even started, when it was just a civil war confined within Ukraine, he said, as long as you don't add Ukraine to NATO or keep doing NATO buildup in Ukraine, keep building up U.S. forces in Ukraine, then we're not going to intervene. But the U.S. continually floated the idea of adding Ukraine to NATO. They continued to build up troops right on Russia's border. After overthrowing Ukraine's government, this is the other thing, Ukraine had a president who wanted peace. He was moving towards peace with Russia for 4 years. He was overthrown in a coup. The U.S. and NATO funneled a ton of money to these right-wing ethno-nationalist groups who overthrew the government and started a civil war, which created a domino effect that led to the Russian intervention. At every single turn, it has been the U.S. and NATO preventing a peace agreement because it's not actually about protecting Ukrainian sovereignty for them. It's about weakening Russia, who they view as a geopolitical enemy. And they want to do it without actually using American troops. They want to use Ukraine as a pawn, as a proxy. And they don't care how many pregnant Ukrainian women or disabled Ukrainian people or elderly Ukrainian people have to be sent to the front line to do it. They just want to weaken Russia and keep the war going. And at every turn, it has been them who have rejected peace, even when Ukraine wanted to sign a peace agreement all the way back in 2022. And imagine how much bloodshed that would have saved if they would have signed that peace agreement that Boris Johnson of the UK was sent to break up. He was sent to Ukraine and told Zelensky not to sign it. And this fucking guy wants to come out here and say, it's Putin. It's Putler. Putin is Hitler. We need to keep fighting the war. It's not us. It's not NATO who rejected Putin's peace agreement. Everything's Putin. He sounds like MSNBC. Bro sounds like CNN. And we'll see if Hasan provides some pushback here, but he nodded his head. He said, yeah, it's Putin, yeah. I hope he provides some pushback. We'll see.
Who are driving this war. And as far as I've seen, Putin has not really changed his goals here. And his goals are, if not necessarily to kind of occupy all of Ukraine, is to prevent.
Yeah, he's nodding his head. He agrees. He agrees. Fucking bring up the 2014 coup. Bring up the 2022 peace agreement that NATO pressured Zelensky not to sign. Bring up any of the pieces of evidence, of which there are a mountain, that this guy's lying about Putin being the main aggressor and about this being a war for sovereignty. It's not. It's not. It's a NATO proxy war against Russia because Russia nationalized a bunch of their energy industry and stopped letting, U.S. corporations just freely exploit the shit out of them like they did after the collapse of the USSR. Because Russia stabilized themselves a little bit and refused to become a colony of the United States, the U.S. wants to destroy them, and they're trying to use Ukraine as a proxy to do so. That is what's happening. This guy probably knows that's what's happening too. Or he's just so caught up in the Western liberal corporate media that he actually thinks this is reality.
Ukraine's independence. It's to curtail Ukraine's ability to make its own foreign policy and to kind of restore Ukraine to its proper role as he sees it, as kind of this subject within the larger Russian imperium. And if that continues to be his goal, it's hard for me to see what kind of workable agreement could come out of this meeting.
No agreements, no peace. There can be no agreements or no peace. Putin's too evil. Putin's too evil, even though he offered multiple peace agreements and we rejected them. We have to keep fighting. So what if pregnant Ukrainian women are being sent to the front line? That was an article that came out this week. Who cares if disabled Ukrainians are being sent to fight Putin? We can't have peace. We need to keep going. And it's all his fault, too. None of it's our fault. Here's that article I was talking about. Ukrainian news outlet suggests U.S. and UK governments are the primary obstacles to peace. And they go on to detail the peace agreement that was on the table before NATO sent Boris Johnson, then Prime Minister of the UK, to pressure Zelensky into not signing it. 3 years later, the bloodshed is still going. The devastation is still going. The proxy war is still going. It could have been over. And Ukraine would have had to make some territorial concessions. Yeah, but they were shelling the eastern part of Ukraine and killing people there and banning the Russian language there because most of the people are Russian speakers in East Ukraine. They were in a civil war for years prior. So they could have just not done that. They could have not shelled their own civilians. They could have not put neo-Nazi militias like the Azov Battalion into their actual military, which they did. It's insane. And this was all after a U.S.-sponsored coup, of course. But no, it's all Putin, just like always. Every time the U.S. is fighting a war or a proxy war, whatever leader we're trying to take out is Hitler, and we need to keep fighting them. We need to keep fighting them. This is World War II all over again. No. Everywhere that the U.S. has supported in terms of foreign policy since World War II has been hyper-reactionary. We have only fought imperialist wars of aggression and expansion. We haven't fought any just wars. And even our role in World War II was we allowed Hitler to rise to power. American corporations funded Hitler's rise to power. We tried to appease him for years. And we only actually got involved when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor because Japan was our imperial rival at the time. And then we tried to seize all of their colonies in Korea and shit. Ever since then, there has not been any U.S. war that you can argue was just. But we're so supposed to believe that they care about the people of Ukraine, the same country that killed 20% of the Korean population, the same country that destroyed Iraq this century, and Libya and Syria, that threw these countries into chaos. They're fighting for justice in Ukraine. Like, give me a break, bro. Give me a break. And Hasan's not offering any pushback. It's so...
Okay, that's interesting. So you said
once you
that,
see it with Hasan, you can't unsee it. I hope a lot of you Hasan Piker fans start looking at him with a much more critical eye, because you have some kind of cult of personality towards him, and it is not helpful for anything. Everybody should be critiqued.
Russia's goals in Ukraine might not necessarily be like the entire takeover of Ukraine, which I feel like is a position that...
Of course it's not. But if the war keeps going, if Ukraine refuses to sign a peace agreement, what else is Russia going to be able to do?
Other liberal foreign policy wonks would disagree with you on. I think that is, and there is like real fear, I think, from what I've seen from the Western world, liberal capitalist countries in Europe, that
he's like calling himself a liberal too. Other liberal policy wonks would disagree with you on this. What about the communists? What about what the socialists say? Aren't you a Marxist? Isn't that what you call yourself? Why are you talking about liberal foreign policy wonks as the experts? This is a liberal foreign policy wonk. They're morons and warmongers. And his face looks like a pear. Why is his face so long and yet so wide? It's like a diamond. Anyways.
Are worried about an even further incursion of Russia. Like, this is a real fear. Whether Russia has the capabilities to do so does not even matter in this equation, even though I feel like that calculation is obvious. They recognize that Russia does not have the capability to do this. Otherwise, Finland and Sweden would not have voided their handshake neutrality agreement and joined NATO. If there was a real imminent fear of Russian invasion, right? I think.
Yeah, this idea that Russia is going to take over Ukraine and then roll tanks into Poland. I mean, that's nonsense. I think the concern, the real concern.
At least we get that. A grain of truth in a mountain of lies. At least they admit that Russia's not trying to recreate the Russian Empire like other liberals will claim. But that's the thing. That's what these guys do. They're a little bit better than the neoliberal warhawk Democrats in terms of rhetoric. But their ultimate function is to steer radicals back into the Democratic Party, to keep them confined within the two-party system, which will never bring about any kind of real change. So that's it for the interview, except for the end here, where, interestingly enough, Hasan Piker got cooked by his own audience for this interview. His own audience was very upset with him, and now he's going to scold them for being too radical and being too revolutionary and not having a sit-down conversation with some warmonger from Washington, D.C. Nice, chummy little conversation.
Chatters, you have misbehaved this entire time. That was shocking. That was alarming how badly you were misbehaving. It's perfectly healthy to have a back and forth. It's not supposed to be just a straight-up interview, okay? There's a reason.
Is it, though? When you're talking to a warmonger who's trying to send pregnant Ukrainian women to fight and die in NATO proxy war against Russia and against Putin, is it okay to just sit down and have a chummy conversation with them? And that's the thing. He has so much leniency for these progressive Democrats. They can support liberal Zionism. They can support the existence of ethno-nationalist Israel. They can support a Ukraine proxy war, and they're fine. But us at the ACP, if we don't drape ourselves in like 17 rainbow flags, then we're right-wing nationalists, right? If we don't accept all of these woke culture war positions and just try to focus on class struggle instead of culture wars, we're nationalists. We're the right-wingers. Why don't you accuse him of being a right-winger? He's supporting ethno-nationalist groups in Ukraine and Israel. But that's the thing. They have so much leniency for the Democrats and so much harsh vitriol for anybody who's working outside of the Democrats. And that's what's so disgusting to me. You act so offended by us because we're not hyper woke, because I don't have blue hair and look like a liberal, and I don't paint my nails or whatever. You think we're right-wingers because of that. But then this guy who's supporting the funding and arming of a genocidal ethno-state, you're like, well, guys, sometimes it's all right to just sit down and hang out and have a conversation. But the ACP, those guys who have been anti-Zionist for the last 5 years plus, those guys who are hardcore communists who have never supported a U.S. regime change effort, no, they're right-wingers. They're way too right-wing for me. What the hell do you think being right-wing is? This is what I mean. It's all based on vibes for him. It's not based on substance. AOC and Bernie and Matt Duss and these people, they are culture warriors. They do engage in the culture war. They are more stereotypical leftists in terms of their aesthetic and their look and the amount of time that they spend talking about social issues instead of actual class struggle and class-based issues. Because of that, because of those leftist vibes, he thinks they're left-wingers, no matter how many fascist ethno-states they support or how many justifications they give for those states' existence. But us, the ACP, well, we lift weights. We lift weights, and not enough of our members are trans. So we're nationalists. We're evil right-wingers because of vibes, bro. That's my Hasan laugh imitation. It's like high schoolers just smoked weed for the first time.
Why, there were points where I was talking without asking a complete question. Son, do you remember how Chad was behaving when he first talked to Ryan Grimm? Now it's the same for your information. Yeah, it is kind of crazy. Some don't understand there's no point in talking to people who agree with you on 100%.
Ryan Grimm's a journalist. He's not a foreign policy advisor for a warmongering fake progressive politician.
Everything, yeah. And also, in terms of like American foreign policy, Matt does, and his perspective is considered radical.
There it is again, you guys. There it is again. Well, these progressive Democrats aren't so bad. Compare them to the other Democrats. Bro, that's like comparing a piece of shit to another piece of shit. Well, this piece of shit's smaller than the other piece of shit, so we better go to the ballot box and vote for the smaller piece of shit. How about no? How about it's all just shit at the end of the day? How about organize a party that isn't a piece of shit at all? Why do we have to settle for the more shiny turd? Why? Why? It's just because that's what's within the Overton window, within the bounds of what's considered acceptable discourse. Any discourse that's too radical, that's genuinely revolutionary, he thinks is cringe and uncool. But if you're a little bit better than Nancy Pelosi, if you're a little bit less corrupt and still a Democrat, man, Hasan will do propaganda for you all day. He'll even defend you to his audience, which he's completely cucked by normally. It's just why I don't get, like, I haven't been reading the chat much, but if you can't see it at this point, you're just coping. Like, you're just making excuses for this guy. He's a funnel and a net for the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, whose ultimate function is to prevent radicals from organizing anything outside the two-party system, which is necessary, absolutely necessary for real change. The Democrats voting for AOC will never, ever, ever end the wars and, reinvest Wall Street's wealth in the American people and change the structure of our system. Never. And as I said a million times, this has been explained by every successful Marxist-Leninist in history. Every single one. Read just a small pamphlet from Mao, a small pamphlet from Lenin. That's all it would take. But instead, he uses the name of Marxist because it's hip and becoming a little more popular, and it's edgy, while at the end of the day, filtering people back into the Democratic Party via its progressive wing, which supports all the same bullshit as the neo-libs. I don't get how you don't see it. Like, maybe there's just like a cult of personality around this guy. Maybe you're caught up in the same kind of vibe-based politics that he is, where you're not able to look at the substance of what these politicians actually support, what these progressive Democrats are actually doing in practice. Maybe you're caught up in the culture war. Maybe you just think he's a funny guy. Maybe you just have an attachment to him, like a parasocial relationship because he's a streamer. But if you look at this shit objectively, how can you see him as anything else but a stopgap for the Democrats? Right? This is as radical as you're allowed to be. You can call yourself a socialist. You can call yourself a Marxist. You can go to DSA events or whatever. But the second you leave the Democratic Party, that's when you're beyond the pale. As long as you stay within the Democrats, you can pretend to be as radical as you want, because in practice, you're supporting neoliberalism and U.S. imperialism. That's his role. He's a stopgap. He prevents any kind of mass exodus from the Democratic Party. And he's even thinking about it right now with Zionism. He's like, all these people are turning against Zionism. How do we keep them as Democrats? Like, if you're anti-Zionist, you should want people to leave the Zionist Democratic Party. What are we talking about here? You're more concerned about people leaving the Democrats than you are about turning this new surge of anti-Zionist consciousness in America into something revolutionary, into something that can actually fight against Israel and the Israeli lobby and AIPAC. Because the Democrats never will. And if you still think change is going to come about through the two-party system, if that's what you're hung up on, and you think Hasan is right about people needing to vote for Democrats and remain within the party, I don't even know what to tell you at this point. You should have been there for the 2020 Bernie Sanders campaign when they rigged that shit against him. That party is a corrupt, horrific, warmongering, Zionist, ethno-nationalist piece of garbage. And it always will be. And the only hope that we have for real structural change, for improving the daily lives of the American workers and the working class in all these different countries America is destroying, the only way to bring about that change is to work outside of the two-party system. And what Hasan Piker does is he badmouths anybody who's trying to build that movement, who's trying to build something truly revolutionary, split off from the Dems and Republicans. And he's trying to filter people who would otherwise leave the Democrats right back into the Democrats. No, don't leave. Look, we have some progressive ones. Yeah, I know Matt Duss said that he supports the existence of ethno-nationalist Israel. I know AOC voted for them to continue receiving tons of U.S. weapons to do genocide and create a man-made famine. But they're better than Nancy Pelosi. You got to compare them to the other Democrats. No, you don't. No, you don't, because the ACP is here now. You can join a real communist party that says we don't support Israel, at all. Zero funding to Israel on day one when the American Communist Party takes power. Show me one progressive Democrat who's saying, if you vote for me, we'll defund Israel completely on day one. That's what's needed. And that will never come from this two-party system. And, I used to buy into this, right? This is from the perspective of somebody who did work for Bernie Sanders for a year. From the perspective of someone who did donate to AOC's campaign, because people like Hasan and Kyle Kulinski told me it was going to work and it was going to make life better for my community and for my family. Guess what, guys? It didn't work. It didn't fucking work. AOC immediately started cozying up to Nancy Pelosi and voting against defunding Israel. It didn't work. Give it up. You're not transforming the Democrats. And the question becomes then, do they actually believe in this strategy? Do they actually believe that the Democratic Party can be something that it was never designed to be? Something it was never designed to be, a communist, pro-worker, anti-war party. Do they really believe that? Or are they just playing this role of filtering people back into the Democrats because it's lucrative? And because you can still go on GQ magazine and Rolling Stone magazine as long as you're not a real revolutionary who actually threatens power. Because I feel like it's just pure opportunism. That's why he won't have the ACP on. He knows we're correct about these issues. He knows we're correct about the corruption of the Democratic Party. But then he wouldn't get to speak at Oxford or go on GQ or Rolling Stone if he would actually take a revolutionary position. And if we were able to call him out on not taking a revolutionary position on his show, it would hurt his audience, which again hurts his bottom line. It's opportunism. Marco, thank you, brother. Appreciate you for the $10. I'll give Hasan credit for potentially opening the mind of some of his fans, which may lead them to ACP. The same thing for Chomsky, for older leftists, despite funneling people into the downs and promoting anti-communism. Oh, I missed a part earlier. There was a part where Matt Duss compared communism to Zionism, where he said that, communism killed millions of people in the past, but you still call yourself a communist, and says communism is the same as Zionism. That's the kind of anti-communism that Matt Duss was promoting on Hasan's show with no pushback. I forgot to play that part. Or maybe I did and I didn't realize it. But yeah. And if you found Midwestern Marx or the ACP or found Marxism-Leninism via Hasan, if you started with Hasan as like an entryway, totally fine. You shouldn't feel ashamed about that at all. I know a lot of people like that in the ACP who started with Hasan. It's a ton of them, right? And that is a good role that he plays. But the problem is that most people don't leave that, right? Most people don't evolve beyond that. He tries to keep as many people as possible stuck in that bubble where no revolutionary practice can actually happen, where it's just the aesthetic of radicalism. And there's also a lot of things he doesn't teach people that much. Former Hasan Piker fans, you have to teach them a lot about theory and about Marxist history and these things, versus somebody who's been watching Midwestern Marx for years. They already know a lot of this stuff because we teach it. But he would rather talk about Joe Rogan and, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce and get a gajillion views. I mean, I was going to say I don't blame him, but I do blame him because I could have done the same shit. Right? But instead, I chose to tell the truth about the Russia-Ukraine war, and I lost my TikTok account that had gained almost 400,000 followers in a year. Right? I could have been this giant influencer if I would have just towed the line. And maybe that's why why I'm able to see what Hasan's doing so clearly, because I'm in a similar position. If I would have just stayed within the Democratic Party and been a progressive liberal, I would probably have 1 million followers right now and much more money in my bank account. I mean, I know I would. Guarantee I would. But I couldn't do that. I couldn't betray my principles. And I told the truth about what was going on in Russia, Ukraine. I told the truth about the U.S. coup effort in Cuba that they called SOS Cuba. And my account got nuked. And then 6 accounts after that got nuked as well. So yeah, I do hold it against him that he couches his positions and makes them less radical than they could be so that he can have this lucrative career in political streaming and be on Rolling Stone magazine and shit. Because I could have done the same thing, Hasan, but I chose to have a pair of balls because I actually care about this shit. I actually have principles and I won't sell them out for anything. I would frankly rather die. And I do not think that Hasan has that same character. And I think that's really the crux of it more than anything. I don't know that he's like a CIA operative or anything. I think it's just opportunism. Because, you know, you kind of train yourself if you're a content creator and you're trying to not get banned. You train yourself to be more liberal. You train yourself to say things that aren't hyper offensive to the establishment, to the existing status quo. So it trains you to basically not be a revolutionary if you want to be a famous and rich content creator, which he is. There's a reason Hazal-Din was banned, I was banned, and Jackson Hinkle was banned repeatedly. There is a reason for that. It's not because of Jackson's position on LGBTQ or whatever, or some of his edgy tweets. It's because of our geopolitical positions. It's because we stand for working class revolution, not voting for progressive Democrats, for the working class to organize itself and seize political power, and to end all of these wars, to defund Israel day one, to get out of Ukraine day one, to get a peace agreement immediately, and stop pushing all of these U.S. corporate interests and military interests around the world. That's why we get banned, because of the substance of our political message, not because of the aesthetic of it. Not because of some culture war, you know, engagement baiting that Jackson did 4 years ago. It's because Jackson stood against the U.S. proxy war in Ukraine and against the U.S. coup effort in Syria stronger than Hasan ever did. That's why we got banned. Because we're not opportunists. And Haas and Jackson could be doing the same thing as me. They could have become liberal progressives and had a real nice career as influencers doing fluff piece interviews with Bernie and fucking AOC. But we have principles and we actually care about this country, and we actually care about ending imperialism and liberating the working class. So you'll never see me next to AOC. And if you do, I'm going to be reaming her out about voting to continue funding Israel and funding Israel's Iron Dome. I'm not going to be sitting in a chair bragging on Twitter about how I got to meet her or playing video games with her. Liberals run on bourgeois feminism. It just wants to demonize strong men and real working class power. Yeah, I mean, they do all this culture war stuff, right? But it's bourgeois feminism, like you said. They say, yeah, we need progressive politics without ever actually changing the capitalist system. Right? Without ever actually doing anything to change the structure of our system and how it operates on a day-to-day basis. It's all this culture war stuff. Vote for us because the Republicans are racist and transphobic and homophobic and all these culture war things. We're not going to do anything for you as a working class American. We're not going to do anything to end the wars, but you have to vote for us because we're morally superior to the Republicans because we're feminists or whatever. And the only real feminism is communism. What you get, I guess, called proletarian feminism, if you wanted to keep the word feminism. By the way, SAG is short for Sagittarius in my name. Very cool. Thank you, comrade, for the super chats. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you very much. Holy cow, the chat is blowing up today. I gotta do influencer drama more often. I gotta call out Hasan Piker more often. Now I see why. Who's that guy that just like talks about Hasan all the time? I mean, there's a lot of them now. And I don't want to be lumped in with those losers either. I have real substantive critiques of Hasan. I'm not just critiquing him from a culture war perspective. Oh, he's a woke snowflake liberal. What a gay loser. Okay, that's not me. I'm criticizing the substance of his politics and the role that he plays within the American political system of acting as a stopgap and a filter and a net for the Democrats. A big old fishing net that they use to bring us back in. QXC, is that the guy's name? Asmongold? Yeah, that guy sucks. Isn't that the guy who like lives in his own shit and talks about how Palestinians are like subhuman and don't have the same level of culture and intelligence as Americans while he literally lives in like actual garbage and plays video games all day? That's Asmongold, right? CIA took me out. Sorry, guys. No, I hit this button on my mouse that actually accidentally backed me out. I should probably turn that button off. That's Asmongold. Yeah, sounds about right. No, it's like QXC or something. I don't know. I don't follow these streamers that much. I like Speed. I like I Show Speed. Is that what it is? QXC? XQC. That's the guy. Yeah, I'm not trying to be like that guy who just like grifts off of Hasan's name value. Although clearly it works. We have over 1,000 viewers in here, so maybe I will become XQC. Don't knock it till you try it, I guess. Who watches these people, man? Who's watching Asmongold and XQC and stuff? Like, I kind of like Charlie, the Penguin Z guy. He basically just takes like white bread, milk toast positions on everything. But like, I don't mind listening to his videos. The people he usually calls out are actually pieces of shit. But every time I've heard XQC talk, I'm like, how does this guy have an audience? Just bots, maybe. Liberals and Azovites, yeah. Gamers and gays. The lumpen scum watch that, I guess. Because brain rot. You need to have a joint, Eddie? I'm good. Maybe after this stream when I need to go to sleep. But for now, I need to be fired up. I don't need to damper my revolutionary energy with drugs. Talk to Markiplier. That guy actually seems like a nice guy. I like I Show Speed, though. Yeah, I like Speed. Oh, my ads are on? Sorry, guys. Sorry about that. I always forget to turn them off. For some reason, they automatically turn on now, and it's really frustrating. Because I do not want my lives interrupted by ads, ever. I am not that money hungry. No one watches except bots and kids. Yeah, it is a lot of kids. I mean, I think back on some of the YouTubers I used to watch as a kid. Like, you know, even in high school, I was a fan of like Jake and Logan Paul. You know, kids just have it's impossible to really think critically about the world and understand that other people are grifters, you know, until you've actually been in the adult world and you know what it's like to be adult and you have an experience, or, you know, you have experiences with other adults and a wide variety of people. It's hard to like spot which people are bad and which people are good and which people are grifting. And, you know, you're just a kid. You don't fucking know. You're just like, yeah, this Logan Paul guy is cool. Look how many subscribers he has. Just keep him out of the forest in Japan. Ray William Johnson. I used to watch him too. I did. Not Logan Paul. I know, right? Logan's so bad, bro. Jake is better than Logan. Logan is terrible. He is such a rotten, jealous, narcissistic human being. I respect Jake for the boxing. I really do. He actually has turned himself into a good boxer. And yeah, all he does is, you know, fight washed up wrestlers like Ben Askren. But, well, he just beat like a professional boxer recently. So that's impressive to me as a combat sports athlete, frankly. I'm not saying Jake Paul is perfect, but he's the superior of the two brothers for sure. Yes. I'm going to get to this. The anti-drug stance is a right-wing play. I just don't think you should be high when you're organizing, right? People who know me know I'm pretty lax about marijuana. I'm not like a hardcore anti-weed guy. It's got medicinal properties, you know. I mean, I'll just say it, when I was wrestling and still competing really hard, sometimes it would help me wind down and, you know, help my body that was all sore and beat up after wrestling. But that being said, you know, there's like in the 60s, the hippies would go to an anti-war march and they'd all be passing around a joint, you know, and I don't think that's the way. I think you should try to be sober and disciplined and clear-headed when you're out there organizing. If you want to come home after the organizing event and, you know, stop at the dispensary on your way home and smoke some before bed, like, and I don't care. But I do think that when we're organizing, it's best to be as clear-headed as possible. And I also think part of the reason they're pushing weed so hard and there are dispensaries all over now is because For one, it makes money for the corporation selling it. And two, it does pacify the population, right? It makes us more okay with our exploitation and our oppression. As long as we get to come home from work at night and smoke a joint, or as long as we get to wake up in the morning and smoke a joint before work. That's a lot of people. So I think it does pacify some of that revolutionary energy, and I think the ruling class knows that. But okay, this is one for the MMA people. This will be the last topic before we wrap up, because I'm literally sweating my ass off. I look like I'm in a sauna right now, so we'll wrap it up after this one, and I'm gonna go take a shower. But yeah, for those who don't know, Raja Jackson is the son of Rampage Jackson, and he was supposed to do like a professional wrestling event this weekend. And what happened is one of the professional wrestlers named Psycho Stu, he's like an amateur wrestler who does it for fun. He's this veteran with PTSD who does pro wrestling. To cope with his PTSD and to give him something to do now that he's back from war. So this guy tried to do a bit with Raja Jackson, with Rampage's son. He rolled up to the event and this guy hit him with a prop. It's a prop can that you can hit somebody on the head and it looks like it explodes, but it actually doesn't hurt. Right. And Raja didn't know what he was doing and was mad. Why'd you do that? What the heck? And, Psycho Stu, this guy probably shouldn't have hit him with a can. Right. Probably shouldn't have. I think it was kind of soft by Raja to get mad about it. Just go along with it. Right. You're at a wrestling event. He's doing a wrestling stunt. Who cares? But anyways, they make up. The guy apologizes to him 3 times. They shake hands. Everything's cool. And then they say, well, we're going to let you guys get in the ring together then. We're going to let you do a little something because we've built hype for this match through this can crushing thing. So Raja Jackson is he's doing a kick live stream, this whole event. And the whole event, he's been invited as a VIP to this event. The whole time he's just sitting on his cell phone, looking at his kick chat. He's surrounded by real people at a real event where he's the VIP. And the whole time he's lost in this little cell phone, reading the chat. And he's slowly getting rage baited by the chat. He's got these kids or bots or whatever telling him, you're a pussy. Why didn't you beat that guy's ass when he hit you with the can? You're a pussy. And you see him start to get genuinely angry. Right? He's the VIP at this event. And he's so locked in on his Twitch chat. He's so antisocial and terminally online that you see him just get progressively angrier and angrier till the point where he's like, I'm going to F this guy up. When I go in the ring, I'm going to mess him up. I'm going to punch him till they take me off of him. He goes in the ring, and this guy thinks it's a wrestling match, right? A fake wrestling match. So he just lets Raja Jackson pick him up, thinking that Raja is going to set him down nice like you do in wrestling, or you try to make it look like you're slamming him hard, but you actually don't. It's like an acting thing, obviously. Sorry if some of you thought pro wrestling was real and I'm bursting your bubble right now. It's not real. It's scripted. So the guy does what he's supposed to do. He lets Raja pick him up, and Raja slams the shit out of him, knocks him unconscious, and proceeds to punch him in the face while he's unconscious 22 times. So the guy is now choking on his own teeth and choking on his own blood, goes to the hospital, wakes up, doesn't remember anything, and is apologizing to his wife for being in the hospital. That's the kind of family man this guy is, right? He was apologizing to his wife, I'm sorry I'm in the hospital, worried that he's inconveniencing other people when he literally almost just died. A few more punches landed by Raja Jackson, and this man would have been dead for sure. He almost died. They had to give him CPR because he was choking on his own teeth and blood. It's disgusting. Okay, so everybody freaks out about it. Everybody's mad about it. And this MMA YouTuber who goes by the name of MMA Guru, who I have been watching for a while, and I've heard him talk about the JQ a little bit. I've heard him talk about Nick Fuentes a little bit. He makes a lot of edgy, racist jokes for his chat. He's like a total basement dweller. He started streaming in his mom's basement. Now he's like a huge streamer because he is funny, and he does call out the UFC and calls out their bullshit, which is why people like him. but there's always a hint of like racially charged messaging. And let me just show you his video here. Let me just show you the MMA Guru's video so you can, because I'm not going to be able to explain it, right? And obviously Rajah Jackson is a piece of shit, right? That is undisputed. Nobody's defending Rajah Jackson. But just listen to the way that MMA Guru describes this event and talks about Rajah. And tell me if you see anything strange. And before I open this, I will say this video by the MMA Guru caused a bunch of white nationalists and Nick Fuentes fans to flock to his account. Okay, so even if he didn't think that the rant he was going on was racist, the self-avowed open racists did think it was a racist rant, and they were praising him for it. So the white nationalists love this. They now flock to his account, and now all of his super chatters are either making super racist jokes against black people, or they're asking him to go on Nick Fuentes' show. And the MMA Guru's out here like, I don't know what you mean. I wasn't being racist. I was just talking about one guy, not an entire race of people. And it's like, well, okay, maybe you genuinely feel that way. You genuinely didn't think you were being racist, but the white nationalists seem to love you now. So you got to grapple with that fact. They thought what you were saying was racist and they love it. And in reality, I think he is like a racist JQer. And he just is too afraid to say it. When somebody asked him to go on Nick Fuentes' show, he said, let me become a millionaire first. So basically, yeah, I agree with Nick Fuentes, but I'm not going to say it because I care about money more. I'm too much of an opportunistic grifter. The last thing I'll say before I play this video is his grandfather. He said on a stream the other day, my grandfather liberated Kenya when he was my age. He liberated Kenya by putting down the Mau Mau Rebellion, which, if you know anything about African history, the Mau Mau Rebellion was a popularly supported independence movement that was violently and brutally put down by the British colonizers, who killed thousands and thousands of Kenyan people in order to continue controlling the country and extracting their resources. So his grandpa was involved with the colonization of Kenya and the suppression of independence movements, and that's what MMA Guru calls liberation. Also, of course, there's British race science, the racism that they in race science, where they basically argue that African people were underdeveloped and therefore Britain should be allowed to colonize them. So I have a feeling MMA Guru's been indoctrinated with that kind of race science. But I'll shut up now. I'll watch the video. Or part of it. I'm not playing the whole thing. Don't watch unless you're in
vapor.
Close your eyes.
I would understand. If Raj, way more to it as well, by the way. Way more to it as well.
I don't want to show the video. It's so gross.
Absolutely nothing.
The video itself is sickening. You can look it up if you want. I'm not watching it again. I've already seen it too many times. Yeah, I'm skipping this.
Now, maybe you didn't know he was unconscious, even though you've trained and you know what that looks like, you dumb animal.
Calls him a dumb animal. He says animal over and over and over again. Let me try and skip through this. I really don't want to watch it again.
Jackson said, after saying, are you going to sell it? Which may seem like I'm saying that he did it after he'd already said, are you going to sell it? I said this on Twitter. I said, get off of me. Pink hair guy comes in. Red hair guy comes in from out of the ring. He's had enough. He's going to attempt to save this man's life before Rajah kills him in the fucking ring in front of children. Goes to him, tries to take the back. Rajah ends up now targeting him instead. He takes the brunt of it and he starts wrestling with Rajah up against the cage while this man is, for all we know, dead on the canvas. He's not. He lives. Not after they had to do a lot to...
Okay, I can't find the part I'm looking for right now. Just give me a second.
Simply attempted murder. And I believe that Rajah Jackson should go to jail for a very long time.
I agree with that, by the way. This is a disgusting act by Rajah Jackson, but just listen to the I got to find the right part. There's a way that he says it and language that he uses that the white nationalists really liked.
Not talking about months. I'm not talking about a couple of years. I'm talking 30 to 40 years at least for what I consider to be blatant attempted murder from Rajah Jackson. I think that Rajah Jackson, and what I'm going to show you in today's video, is going to show you everything, okay? I have every moment, every bit of context, every single thing that happened in order, okay? Even some other moments here that I'm going to show you that a lot of people haven't even seen yet about this whole situation because everyone's only reacting to this. But by the end of this video, you are going to find it very hard to disagree with me when I say that Rajah Jackson is a dumb animal that belongs in a fucking cage for the next 30 to 40 years. End of discussion. I'm going to go through this video with you right now. It's probably going to get age restricted. I'm going to play it. And I don't know if I should play it in slow-mo because that might add insult to injury. But I'm going to show you what this Rajah Jackson does.
All right, 1 second, guys. I don't want to look through it because you heard him calling him he called him an animal repeatedly and was screaming at one point, "Animal, get in the cage, get in the cage." And even that, it's like, whatever. Maybe he is just calling the individual himself an animal. It's not racially charged at all. But there's something else that he said. 1 sec. Let me just pull up my TikTok about the situation. Because I know I have it on there. I just don't want to get age restricted for playing the violence, and I don't want to see it either. I've seen it too many times. It is really gross. That poor guy, that poor man. So fuck Rajah Jackson, but here we go. Before I make this video, let me just say I am not a person who jumps to accusing others of racism or who cares about canceling certain content creators. But I will say, I should have just played this video from the beginning because I explain everything right here. But all right, whatever. We got to figure it out now. Somebody who's followed the MMA guru for a long time, I think that he and his audience are falling into a very dark political rabbit hole. One that's drawing in more and more basement dwellers every day via the internet. Now, Guru has made a lot of edgy jokes in the past, but his last video about Rampage Jackson's son Rajah caused a lot of actual white nationalists to flock to his content, where they're leaving comments that are so racist, I can't show them on this app. And to be as fair as possible to Guru, Rajah Jackson is a piece of shit. He basically tried to kill a defenseless man. But let's watch his actual video to see what the white nationalists are so interested in.
You dumb animal, get in a cage. I cannot express that enough. Certain people don't belong in society with us. End of discussion. And he is one of them. This is a dumb animal with no frontal cortex. End of discussion. Whatever that thing is in the front of your brain, if that made me sound even dumber.
Okay, now, like I said, Rajah Jackson is a piece of poop who deserves to be roasted and in prison. However, the thing that he said there about the undeveloped prefrontal cortex is basically textbook British race science. This idea they completely made up in order to justify colonizing and enslaving Africa by arguing that the people there... Now you guys see it? Oh yeah, he's talking about race. Yeah, and he's pretending now like he wasn't. And it's like unevolved. These people shouldn't be in society with us. These people have an undeveloped prefrontal cortex. So now he's trying to deny it and backpedal because he's too pussy to own what he actually said and own the fact that it was racially charged. But all these Nick Fuentes white nationalist fans are now in his audience, sending him money and praising him and saying, we need more people like you. So it's like, bro, you got to do some self-reflection there. Even if you didn't mean to be racist, right? All of the racists thought you were being racist and they love you for it. And if you're not racist, you shouldn't be okay with that. But I don't think that's what it is. I think he genuinely is racist. I think he was indoctrinated with British race science because his grandpa was a British colonizer in Africa. And I think he knew exactly what he was saying. I think he found Rajah Jackson as like the perfect target, as the perfect individual to basically go on a racist rant against, because Rajah is such a piece of shit and people have so little sympathy for him. But I mean, certain people don't belong in society with the rest of us. You have an undeveloped frontal lobe. Like, these are very, very specific insults that are based in racial lies about black people. They all are. They are worth. less than human, with one of their main arguments being that certain kinds of people don't have a fully developed frontal lobe in their brains. And now Guru's got people sending him super chats asking him to make an appearance with the self-avowed white nationalist Nick Fuentes, who Guru seems to be quite fond of, although he said, "Let me become a millionaire first before talking to him," which does make it seem like he's hiding his actual political views in order to make as much money as possible. And the final piece of evidence for me that I needed to make this video was when he recently said that his grandpa liberated Kenya when he was stationed in Africa with the British military. That was during the Mau Mau Rebellion, which was an independence movement against British colonialism that was violently and horrifically suppressed by the British. So your grandpa didn't liberate Kenya, bud. He kept them in chains. And this makes me think that maybe Guru was taught British race science by his family. It makes me really happy that this video went kind of viral. It really does make me happy. Because the MMA Guru is kind of dominating the MMA scene right now because he's outside of the UFC clique. He's not friends with fighters or UFC executives like the rest of the media is. So he's not afraid to say the truth about the UFC and say what everybody else is thinking when it comes to MMA analysis. So he's, blowing up right now, but I've always suspected this about him, that he was secretly like a JQ or white nationalist. And he's the perfect kind of person, right? He's a fat neckbeard who lives in his mom's basement. He's actually quite tall and kind of built in real life, but still, he started streaming in his mom's basement. He streams every event. He has no social life. It's the exact kind of person that gets drawn into this ideology through the internet. And his fan base is the perfect base for white nationalists to prey on. So I'm really glad a video kind of pointing out his issues went viral, because he also gets a lot of stupid attacks from like hacks, like shitty corporate journalists, and, people who I don't respect. So I'm glad that a real substantive critique of what he was saying went viral-ish. Not viral, but did well enough. All right, you guys. I'm going to go take a shower before I sweat out my entire body weight. Thank you so much for hanging out today. Check out our appearance on the Revolutionary Blackout Network. Carlos, Noah, and I were just on there for 2 hours before this. Did 2 hours with them and then 2 hours with you guys. Let's go. That's what you call cardio, baby. Marxist endurance. But go check that out. acp.us, midwesternmarx.com. Thank you for everything. Did I miss any super chats? Oh, can't really see your side as Russia-Ukraine being a NATO proxy war when they are limiting what munitions are sent there. What do you mean by limiting? Like, obviously, they have to limit. They only have a certain amount of weapons to send. NATO has lost its industrial capacity. Any limits that are set on what they're sending are natural limits set by the amount of weapons that NATO has. And they've been trying to produce more because this has been a problem for a while. They didn't know if they could sustain a protracted war against Russia. But watch the movie Ukraine on Fire. And then watch any of my videos about it. I mean, it's been the US and NATO who have broken up a peace agreement every single time. Every single time. And if you look deeper into it outside of Hasan Piker's streams, if you read a little bit from like Consortium News or People's Dispatch or The Cradle, or if you watch any of Midwestern Marx's videos on it, it's pretty obvious that it's a NATO proxy war. Or you can listen to my Ukrainian friend Slava, who's done lectures about it and how her country is being used as a NATO proxy against Russia. She's probably the best. She knows the whole history of Ukraine, obviously. She grew up there. But yeah. Thanks for the super chat, though. All right, guys. That's all from me. I got to try to stop sweating. We'll see you on the next one.
Stand up, all victims of oppression, for the tyrants fear your might. Don't cling so hard to your possessions, for you have nothing if you have no right. Let racist ignorance be ended, for respect that makes the empires fall. Freedom is merely privilege extended and less enjoyed by one and all. So come brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in the song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. Let no one build walls to divide us, walls of hatred nor walls of stone. Come greet the dawn and stand beside us. We'll live together or we'll die alone. In our world poisoned by exploitation, those who have taken, now they must give. And end the vanity of nations. We've but one earth on which to live. So come brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in the song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. And so begins the final drama, in the streets and in the fields. We stand unbowed before their armor, we defy their guns and shields. When we fight, provoked by their aggression, let us be inspired by life and love. For though they offer us concessions, change will not come from